Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Ovarian Cancer Australia's Teal Ribbon Parliamentary Breakfast. I'm Jane Hill, CEO of Ovarian Cancer Australia, and I will be your host for today. I'd like to let you know in advance that this event is being recorded so that those that can't be here today can access it later. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we're situated today across Australia and pay my respect to their elders, past, present and emerging. I also extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island peoples who are joining us today. Thank you everyone for taking the time to be with us today. In particular, we welcome our keynote speaker, Amy Phillips, and her family, and all the women here today who are living with ovarian cancer, as well as their families. We also welcome family members who've lost their loved one to ovarian cancer. We stand for you. We welcome our Prime Minister of Australia, Scott Morrison, the Health Minister, Greg Hunt, and the Parliamentary Friends of Ovarian Cancer, Sarah Hanson-Young, Dr. Katie Allen, and Meryl Swanson. We've been advised that the leader of the Australian Labor Party, Mr. Anthony Albanese, who was to join us, has been called away on some urgent business this morning, but he's recorded a message that we'll listen to later on. Being just the second day back in Parliament, we know that parliamentarians are under the pump, and we thank those who've been able to make it today. Ovarian cancer doesn't discriminate, and we thank parliamentarians for their support across the political aisles. Also, a very special welcome to our other keynote speaker, Professor Anna DeFazio, and to Megan Spears, Chair of Ovarian Cancer Australia, our board members and our wonderful staff team. To all of our supporters here today, partners, medical and research professionals, parliamentarians, government officials, friends of Ovarian Cancer Australia and sector colleagues, thank you for being here today. Ovarian Cancer is an independent organisation that acts for women affected by ovarian cancer. Our vision is to save lives and that no woman with ovarian cancer walks alone. We provide support for those affected by ovarian cancer and advocate on their behalf and provide sector leadership in doing so. Today, we focus on two things. What we need to do now to ensure that women with ovarian cancer and their families have the support that they need, and where we go in the future so that survival rates improve. And that future lies in personalised medicine. Firstly, we'll hear from Professor Anna DeFazio, who'll tell us about the latest in ovarian cancer research, particularly through the lens of personalised medicine. We'll then hear from our special guest speaker, Amy Phillips, who was diagnosed with ovarian cancer in 2020. She'll share her story and tell us about the positive impact that ovarian cancer specialist nurses has had on her life while she's had ovarian cancer. We'll then hear from the Prime Minister and view the message of the leader of the Australian Labor Party, and then we'll hear from our Health Minister. Today is all about courage. Those Australians who face ovarian cancer have a lot of courage. Let's hear from Bridget, one of our incredible ovarian cancer nurses, about why she carries the courage.
Hi, my name is Bridget and I am an ovarian cancer nurse. I carry the courage because I want people impacted by ovarian cancer now and in the future to have more reasons to hope. I'm privileged to work as part of a team that are doing their all to change the landscape of ovarian cancer because we know it's possible.
Thank you, Bridget, and our other specialist nurses and all the team at Ovarian Cancer Australia for carrying the courage. We can't do this vital work without the financial support of the federal government. We're so grateful for the funding over the past 3 years, including for the Teal support program, so Ovarian Cancer Australia can provide specialist ovarian cancer nurses to support women. We know the difference it makes for these women, especially those in rural and remote areas who don't have ready access to other forms of support. I wanted to acknowledge the government's support for dedicated ovarian cancer research in recent years, which included 20 million for ovarian cancer research and 3 million for the groundbreaking Traceback study. We also thank the government for approving new medicines for the treatment of advanced ovarian cancer. All this is a big shift in the landscape for women with ovarian cancer. But regrettably, we still have a long way to go in improving survival rates for women. With a chance of survival of 48%, we're losing far too many courageous women too soon. Luckily, we have courage in spades and we're ambitious. We're buoyed by the success of the breast cancer community that now have a survival rate of more than 90%. Make no mistake, this result was done by damn hard work, raising awareness, advocating, and ultimately the provision of targeted funding for research that's produced earlier diagnosis and better treatments. We need that too, and we need it now. There's so much more we need to do to change the narrative for ovarian cancer. And that starts here with our parliamentary leaders to make their commitment to make real progress to improving outcomes for women with ovarian cancer. Our first speaker leads a project aimed at developing a personalised treatment approach for women with ovarian cancer. Professor Anna DeFazio is the Director of the Centre for Cancer Research at Westmead Institute for Medical Research and holds the Sydney West Chair of Translational Cancer Research at the University of Sydney. She leads the Gynecological Oncology Research Group at Westmead and is the co-chair of Ovarian Cancer Australia's Expert Advisory Panel. Please join me in welcoming Professor Anna DeFazio.
Thank you, Jane, for that very kind introduction and for giving me the opportunity to speak with you all today. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet, which for me is the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, upon whose land the University of Sydney now stands. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who join us today. I especially acknowledge Amy, who we will hear from soon, the Prime Minister, Mr. Albanese, who can't be with us, Minister Hunt, Jane, distinguished guests, and all of the women who live with or have lived with ovarian cancer. This is really a very auspicious year. It marks the 50th anniversary of the declaration of war against cancer. And it's very timely to look back at what's been achieved worldwide including here in Australia. Over this time, we've seen an increase in the 5-year survival of cancer overall from 51% to almost 70%. This is a truly remarkable achievement, but it hasn't happened by accident. It's the result of very significant research funding and hard work over many years by researchers from diverse disciplines and clinicians working to understand the complexity of cancer, ways to decrease cancer risk, and discovering and trialling new treatments. Sadly, these significant gains made in cancer are not shared equally. While the survival rates in some cancer types, we've just heard about breast cancer, where the survival rate's over 90%, the same cannot be said of ovarian cancer. The 5-year survival rate still languishes below 50%. In other words, below what the average was for all cancers 30 years ago. Having said that, we've made some very significant progress in understanding ovarian cancer over the last decade, and we're now very privileged to see some of this progress translate into improvements in clinical care. We now know that ovarian cancer, like many other cancers, is not a single disease, and the one-size-fits-all approach to treatment has been a real barrier to progress. This barrier is slowly but surely being dismantled. Research, much of which comes from Australian studies, has shown that there are different types of ovarian cancer, driven by very, very different underlying gene alterations. This information, coupled with the availability of new treatments that can target these alterations, is beginning to turn the promise of precision medicine into reality, at least for some women with ovarian cancer. Let's take, for example, the BRCA genes that Angelina Jolie helped to turn into household names. Results from the Australian Ovarian Cancer Study, which was a large national collaboration headed by David Botel, led to Australia being one of the first countries in the world to provide screening for BRCA mutations in nearly all women with ovarian cancer, regardless of the family history. And that is now funded on Medicare. This has resulted in an increase in the number of women who know that they are at risk of developing ovarian cancer and given them the opportunity to take the steps needed to reduce their risk and to avoid this terrible disease altogether. While this in itself is a very significant outcome, the BRCA genes just keep giving. Further research has shown that alterations in BRCA1 and 2 can make ovarian cancer susceptible to a new class of drugs called PARP inhibitors. A series of clinical trials over the last few years has shown remarkable results, with an improvement in the median progression-free survival to over 5 years for BRCA carriers on maintenance PARP inhibitors. And that's compared to only 14 months for women on standard treatment. These improvements are absolutely unprecedented in ovarian cancer. And again, Australia has been on the front foot, with PARP inhibitors being approved and now available on the Pharmaceutical Benefit Scheme. However, as exciting as this is, we need to remember that at the moment, it's only for women with BRCA alterations, which is just over 20% of women with ovarian cancer. Our research has shown that we could push this up to 30 or perhaps 40%, or half of the most common subtype of ovarian cancer, high-grade serous ovarian cancer, if we take into account alterations in genes that are related to the BRCA genes. However, this will take the implementation of testing, such as a new test called the HRD test, which is not yet widely available in Australia outside of the research context. We have an increasing number of these examples in ovarian cancer, where research has revealed new molecular targets in subsets of women with ovarian cancer, and new clinical trials are either underway or in development, some thankfully funded by grants made by the government through the MRFF scheme. But if there's one thing that I've learned from ovarian cancer, it's that the ovarian cancer in one patient is just not the same as the ovarian cancer in the next. And we need to establish the systems to do really deep molecular profiling on every patient to see if there are new treatments and clinical trials that could be of benefit, and to learn more about those dark secrets hiding in the ovarian cancer genome. But this requires more research, And of course, that means more funding. Our experience so far in precision medicine programs, such as our ovarian cancer program, Innovate in New South Wales, Professor Claire Scott's Stafford Fox program in rare cancers, and most out of the Garvan, is that patients and their doctors are desperate for the opportunity to learn as much as possible about each individual patient's cancer and what the best treatment would be if standard therapies are no longer effective. In Innovate alone, our recruitment is almost double what we expected, and the only limitation is funding. We can learn a lot about the gains made in other cancer types, and indeed we can learn about our experience in COVID vaccine development. That very rapid progress can be made where there's political will, sufficient funding, and an appropriate environment and infrastructure to support productive research collaboration. We've all heard the recent call to fund research as if our lives depend on it, because it does. We need to sustain the amazing momentum that we've seen in recent years in improving cancer outcomes and fund ovarian cancer research, as if the lives of our mothers, grandmothers, sisters, and daughters depend on it, because it does. Thank you for the opportunities to speak to you today.
Thank you, Professor De Fazio. I'm ready for a war against ovarian cancer, and I hope our politicians are too. This research brings great promise to women living with ovarian cancer, and I thank you, Professor De Fazio, for the courage you bring and the great leadership in translational research. Ovarian Cancer is advocating for a government-funded national personalised medicine research program, which would pave the way for better outcomes. I now want to introduce Amy Phillips, who will share her experience of living with ovarian cancer. I'd like to say up front that her words could feel confronting to some. It's not an easy story to share, and it won't be an easy one to listen to. Please welcome Amy.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And good morning. It is so lovely to meet you all today. My name's Amy Phillips, and I am a 46-year-old wife and mother of 3 beautiful boys, aged 9, 16 and 17. And I have ovarian cancer. I'm honoured to be able to share just a little of my journey with you as we kick off Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month this morning. And hopefully I can give you just a little bit of insight into what it's like to be diagnosed and to live with this insidious disease. So my cancer journey began a little over 2 years ago. It was Christmas, New Year 2019, and we were watching all of our favourite holiday locations on the New South Wales South Coast go up in smoke. And there was news emerging out of China of a virulent strain of coronavirus that had the makings of an international pandemic. And at work, I was in the midst of facilitating machinery of government changes that had to be implemented in a really short time frame. But 2020 was shaping up to be one hell of a year. And as most of us do at that time of year, I had overindulged in Christmas food and hadn't been exercising much due to the fact that I'd been really busy at work and then on holidays. But I was just feeling really bloated, a bit heavy and a little bit constipated. But I just put that down to being maybe just a little more overweight than usual and not been exercising. However, I kind of got to the point where I was sick and tired of looking and feeling 4 months pregnant and knowing that I absolutely was not. But, nobody wants to bother their doctor over just a little bit of bloating and constipation. Doctors are very busy people and they don't need to be bothered with trivial complaints like that. So I thought, okay, I'm due for a pap smear. I'll make an appointment. And while I'm there, I'll just, I'll mention some of these other symptoms. So I did. And my GP gave me some laxatives and said, look, come back in a week if there's no change. So I returned the following week and she did an internal examination and told me she could feel something 3 times the size of my uterus. So, but, don't worry, it could be anything. So she sent me for a blood test and an ultrasound. And the results came back showing 2 large masses, one sort of this big and one this big, on my ovaries, and which I couldn't feel. They were there and they were very large, but I didn't know they were there. And I had a tumour marker score of over 700, and below 30 is normal. So quite extreme. But again, could be anything. But really, it was fairly likely, and I'm sure my GP was fairly certain at that point that I had ovarian cancer. Ovarian cancer? What on earth is ovarian cancer? I had no idea. I thought, hang on a minute, that can't be right. I always have regular pap smears, and surely if I'm having regular pap smears and I had ovarian cancer, it would have shown up. Well, no, of course not. Pap smears are for picking up and detecting cervical cancer. There is no standard screening test for ovarian cancer. So then began the whirlwind. Within a week, I had met with a gyno-oncologist and I was prepped for surgery in Sydney. We farmed our children out to different family members, and my husband and I made the 3-hour trek up the highway to Sydney. I underwent radical surgery, including a full hysterectomy, which threw me into immediate menopause, among other things. You know, at the time, I really didn't appreciate how major that surgery and recovery would be, but it was successful. So that was fantastic. The surgeon said to me, Amy, I have removed every piece of disease I can see, and I've given you the best chance of recovery, because chemotherapy is really great at mopping up those microscopic parts of disease that's left. So within 6 weeks of surgery, I started my first cycle of chemo. Wow, I thought surgery was tough. Chemo is certainly no fun, but you know, it's bearable knowing that I could come out the other side cancer-free. So, you know, you do chemo for a purpose. You and your family, because it impacts everybody around you, can endure it knowing that it's leading to a positive outcome. Or so I thought. And in our house, the conversation has pivoted in recent times from mum's doing chemo to get better to mum's doing chemo so she doesn't get any sicker. But more about that soon. So it was during my first stint of chemo that I discovered the Teal Support Program and my fabulous Teal Support nurse, Di Keneally. And what a godsend that Teal Support Program and Di have been. Now, don't get me wrong, I have a wonderful oncologist, Dr. Yada Kanjanapan, and the nurses who administer my chemo are lovely, but they're incredibly busy people too. And they don't just focus on ovarian cancer, but the Teal Support Program and ovarian cancer nurses too. And Di checks in on me regularly, and I know that she's only a phone call away, anytime, day or night, whenever I need her. And, you know, I can't understate how important that is. I live in Canberra, so nation's capital, and you would think that I would have access to nurses who specialise in gynecological cancers, like women in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane do, but I don't. Canberra, after all, is just a big country town. And if I don't have access to these services in the capital city of our country, then I can't imagine what the experience of women living in remote and regional areas might be. So thankfully, we all have the Teal Support Program. So Di and I, we talk about all manner of things, and ovarian cancer and chemotherapy throw so many unique challenges at you. And Di has helped me through, you know, periods of intense constipation that comes with chemo. And she's empathised with me about the impact that this disease has had on my intimate relationship with my husband. And we've had that really tough conversation too about what the end looks like with ovarian cancer. So essentially, I said to Di, you know, how does one die of ovarian cancer? Now, that's not a conversation you can have with just anyone. So back to my journey. After 5 months of 3 weekly chemotherapy in 2020, I was done. My scans were clear, my tumour marker score was back in the normal range, and I thought, wow, I've done it. I've beaten this thing. It was all worthwhile. But alas, before long, my tumour markers began to rise, and by November 2020, it was confirmed that my cancer had returned and spread to the lymph nodes throughout my body. So with surgery no longer an option, I launched into another 6 rounds of monthly chemo, followed by what has now been, up to yesterday, 22 weeks of weekly chemotherapy with another type of drug. So my reality is that I am living with ovarian cancer and will do so for the foreseeable future. I am acutely aware of the dire statistics associated with ovarian cancer survival in Australia, and that my chemotherapy options are rapidly disappearing. But I know that there are trials underway and the wonderful work that Anna's doing for new treatments, and that breakthroughs are being made every day. And this gives me hope, because let me be very clear, I am not ready to die. I plan to be here to watch my boys grow up, to meet my grandchildren, and to grow old with my husband. I will not let this disease take that from me. But I need your help. It's ongoing funding and your continued support that provides the treatment options that allow me to hope. I'd really like you to know that as I appear before you today, I am just an ordinary woman. I have no family history of breast cancer or ovarian cancer. I don't have the BRCA gene mutation. I don't hit any of the risk factors for ovarian cancer. I was previously well and healthy, relatively young and fit. I could be your sister, your wife, your mother, your daughter. This disease is insidious and it does not discriminate. It is a silent killer. But we can change that. Together with your help and your commitment at budget time to putting the women in your life first, we can continue to find options to treat and eliminate ovarian cancer. Please, give me the hope I need to beat this disease and be here for my grandchildren. Thank you all for coming this morning, and I really look forward to meeting you again in 5 years' time when I can share with you my latest scan results that show I'm cancer-free, thanks to treatment developed out of research funded by the Morrison government in the 22-23 budget. Thank you.
Wow. Thanks so much, Amy. I'm getting some feedback there. Amy, thank you so much for sharing your story. It takes courage, and to think that you've had chemo only yesterday and you're here today. But if we know one thing about women living with ovarian cancer, is that they have courage. Courage that's tested every single day. I hope that with more research into ovarian cancer, that one day we can stand here and tell a very different story about how we conquered ovarian cancer. I now introduce to you the Prime Minister of Australia, the Honourable Scott Morrison.
Well, thank you very much, Jill. Can I begin before addressing some remarks personally to you, Amy, and to you, Professor DeFazio? Can I acknowledge the Ngunnawal people, their elders past and present and emerging? Can I acknowledge service women and men and veterans who have given this country everything we could hope for? Can I acknowledge the others who are joining us today? My colleague, Greg Hunt, who has been a champion for the cause of ovarian cancer and has been very much in the fight with you, as I've sought to be on every occasion. But particularly, I want to acknowledge all women living with ovarian cancer, the survivors of ovarian cancer. Can I acknowledge their carers, the nurses, their family members, and those who have been with us before and are no longer with us. Jane, you are an absolute trooper in this fight. I want to thank you and for your welcome and congratulations on your appointment of the World Ovarian Cancer Coalition. To Marina Go for her work as chair and Megan Spears, her successor. Megan is a survivor, a diagnosis at age 29 and giving back to Ovarian Cancer Australia for a decade. Amy, words cannot express the impact of what you've just said has had on me. I look forward in so many ways to being part of this each year, and I'm sorry we can't be doing it in person, so we can't meet in person today. This is a day, as you say, of hope. It's a day of strength. It's a day of courage. And I've seen that every year at these gatherings. And your story today was so impactful, and the appeal that you've made so heartfelt and so practical. And I thank you also for the tremendous work you do in the government, and particularly at that time that you were reflecting upon. Thank you for your story. I can't imagine how proud your three boys must be, as you are of them, no doubt. And of course, your husband. They might not grasp it yet, but I suspect they do. And in time, I understand that they will see your strength and it'll inspire them each and every day. But the one thing that came across probably more than anything in what you had to say this morning is you have an indomitable love. And that was my major takeout.
Thank you.
We're willing you on, Amy, and we're in this fight with you. And I want to assure you of that. And there is hope, because last year at this breakfast, I met Caitlin and her eldest daughter, Lilith. And like Amy, who spoke today, Caitlin is an extraordinarily strong and inspirational individual. And I was so pleased to hear that Caitlin has just passed 5 years post-diagnosis. And I'm looking forward to that same message from you, Amy. And so my message to women with ovarian cancer is you are not alone. You've got an incredible team at Ovarian Cancer Australia committed to supporting you every way they can. You have a dedicated Teal nurse who's always on the line, as you said, Amy. You've got friends, you've got family, you've got colleagues in the Australian community out there raising funds and giving generously and seeking to raise awareness about ovarian cancer. And we think of the many other cancers, particularly that impact on women. And we think of the tremendous work that has been done there, like organisations like Ovarian Cancer Australia. And I've worked with many of those and seen the success that they've had in raising awareness. And you're on the same path and doing it so incredibly well. My government is prioritising this cancer, and we have for many years. We are investing in improving early detection, treatment options, and survival rates. We want to get those rates up, and we will continue to do everything we possibly can to be all the way in on this fight. That is my commitment. And there are reasons for optimism. There's certainly a lot of hope in the new drug, Zejula. Greg Hunt always pronounces these things better than I can. Approved by the TGA just last month. It's not only for women with the BRCA gene mutation, but will be an option for all women with high-grade ovarian cancer. And should the experts on the Pharmaceutical Benefits Advisory Committee recommend its listing on the PBS, we will not hesitate. We will not blink, just like we did with the expansion of Lynparza. And I can back this up because it has been the policy of my government that every time they recommend something go on the PBS, we do it. And we do it without hesitation. Since the last election alone, 857 drugs, new drugs, have been put on the PBS. So I can assure you, as soon as we get that recommendation, we'll be all over it. On the MBS, we've made some welcome changes, and I want to thank Jill and Professor DeFazio for acknowledging those. And there are welcome changes effective next month, better aligning gynecology services with contemporary and evidence-based treatment. Since 2019, we've invested in the Teal support program, and it's just so pleasing to see the impact that is having on individuals who are living with ovarian cancer. The Teal support program provides free, dedicated support for women with ovarian cancer and their families through an ovarian cancer nurse consultant who supports them through each and every stage of their ovarian cancer journey, starting from diagnosis to post-treatment. Our government has been proud to fund it, and I'm pleased to announce today we're going to keep doing that, a further $2 million in funding over the next 2 years. The Teal support program has grown rapidly since it commenced in 2019, and it currently supports 420 women, and it's expected to grow to over 700. And because it's a free telehealth service, there are no barriers to support. And I look forward to continuing our support for this program well into the future. I know the pandemic has interfered with so many normal routines. Regular checkups are so important. My wife, Jenny, who trained as a nurse herself, is passionate about this. And I know that ovarian cancer is a terribly hard cancer to detect. And I want to thank all those researchers like you, Professor DeFazio, who are out there doing the work, not only just to develop treatments, but also to develop new testing systems that can make such a difference. The signs in relation to these are vague, they're subtle, and early detection is rare. So I'm very pleased to be with you today. I very much appreciate the opportunity to come along and hear these stories. I can assure you it impacts me deeply. It's a day of hope, Amy. It is. And I want to give you that encouragement and that hope. And Ovarian Cancer Australia is on a mission of hope. And together, I have no doubt that the partnership that we have formed that runs deep will keep making progress. And Amy, we will prevail and you will prevail. And that is my prayer for you and your family. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Prime Minister, for your encouraging words and your government's support for our Teal support program. A further $2 million over the next 2 years will help us to continue our work in supporting women with ovarian cancer. We really appreciate that, Prime Minister. I can't stress how much this funding means to all those living with ovarian cancer and their families. And in particular, the families that live outside of the city areas, in rural and remote areas, who might not get access to this type of support otherwise. We'll now hear from the Leader of the Opposition, his recorded message.
Good morning. Can I acknowledge CEO Jane Hill, Professor Anna DeFazio, Amy Phillips, who is living with ovarian cancer, and live stream participants. I'm honoured to be here to mark once again Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month and support the work of Ovarian Cancer Australia in their work supporting women diagnosed with ovarian cancer and advocacy to drive better outcomes for women with this cancer. We know that every day 5 Australian women will be diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and every day 3 will die from it. The 5-year survival rate is only 48%. We must do better. Can I take the opportunity to acknowledge the work of the Teal Support Program, which provides such an important support for women living with ovarian cancer. Your vision is that no woman with ovarian cancer walks alone. The Teal Support Program does that by making sure women living with the disease do not feel isolated and unsupported. It's a free telehealth support service and importantly is accessible to all women diagnosed with ovarian cancer regardless of where they live. Women are assigned an ovarian cancer nurse consultant who guides and supports them, engages with treatment teams and provides important continuity of care. Since it began in November 2020, the program has supported more than 450 women living with ovarian cancer and their families. We want to make sure that women can continue to access this crucial service and that the service can grow to support more women. And that's why, if in government, we will support the essential funding for this service to continue and grow in scope with $4 million over the coming forward estimates. This funding will allow OCA to maintain and expand the program to support an additional 1,600 women and their families. In making this commitment, I think of everyone living with ovarian cancer and those that we have lost. We lost my friend Bridget Whelan to ovarian cancer back in 2016. She was such a brave person, a constituent and a well-respected advisor both in this Parliament and in the Parliament of New South Wales. I pay tribute to Bridget today, and I pay tribute to all those brave women who are dealing with the consequences of ovarian cancer, and I wish everyone all the best.
I'd like to thank Mr. Albanese for his message of support and strength for women living with ovarian cancer, and we really thank him for his pledge to continue the Teal support program for 4 years should Labor form government after the next election. It is great for ovarian cancer, our community, to know that we've got the support of both houses of Parliament. I mean, both sides of the House. This is an issue that transcends political lines and differences. I'd now like to call on the Health Minister, the Honourable Greg Hunt, to give some closing remarks.
Look, thanks very much to Jane, to Megan, to Marina for your extraordinary work, to acknowledge the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition, but above all else, Amy, and all of our extraordinary ovarian cancer survivors, those that are on the journey, their families, their supporters and their advocates. To Amy, I don't want to start by disagreeing with you, but I will in the gentlest possible way. You said you were ordinary. That's not true. You are extraordinary and you are courageous. And if I may dub you the inspirational Amy, I think that's the truth of it. That there are approximately 200 of us, I believe, that are on this virtual meeting this morning, and I suspect there wasn't a dry eye amongst anybody, and I could see that the PM was moved. Your story is exactly why we need to do what we're doing, and you know, and we know that there are 1,700 amazing women who are diagnosed every year with ovarian cancer, and 1,000 of them will, at this point, lose that journey. We have a 48% survival rate. Now, that's up from 37% over recent years. That's real progress, but the job is not done. And so that's what today is about. That's what Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month is about. And that's what the Teal Ribbon program is about. And ultimately, it boils down to one concept, hope. But that hope has to be backed by real support. So for us, that support comes across the fronts of research, of treatment, and of support in terms of the research, which is really the key to unlocking new treatments, new diagnoses, capacities to not just extend lives, but to beat this cancer. We've been privileged, and I've been privileged over my watch to assist in $83 million of funding through the National Health and Medical Research Council and the Medical Research Future Fund for ovarian cancer. Diagnosis, treatment, ultimately cure. Those are the things that we're working on. In addition to that, though, the listing of new medicines which flows from that. Lynparza extended recently, that yes, it's a saving of $140,000, but every course of treatment with Lynparza can save or extend or improve a life. And that's what's exciting. Zejula, now going through the PBAC process, and PM, I think you got the pronunciation spot on, but going through that PBAC process, I am desperate and hungry and hopeful that that will be approved. And if they do it, then we will race it on to the pharmaceutical benefits scheme. And then, of course, the support through the Traceback program to allow us to help find at the earliest possible stage those who might be impacted by ovarian cancer. But there's one particular support that is incredibly important, and that is the mental health and emotional support and the guidance. And this, Jane, is where the Teal Ribbon program is so important. The Prime Minister's announced that we'll be extending it, giving it that long-term funding and support. And I'm pleased that there is that bipartisan agreement on that front. So I think that's very heartening for everybody at OCA. But what this program really does is it provides the nursing support available via telehealth to help with the journey, to make sure that sometimes when it can be difficult to maintain the flame, that there's a nurse there who can help you, guide you on the treatment, but guide you on that hope that they are the carriers of the flame alongside you, Amy, and everybody else. And so I want to thank everybody today, Jane, to you and Megan, to Marina for her work, but above all else to the inspirational Amy and to every woman and their friends and family and supporters who are on this journey. Our goal is pretty clear: to support, to allow our ovarian cancer patients to thrive, survive, and to live long, clear lives with their families and children, exactly as Amy has pledged to do.
Thank you, Minister. I greatly appreciate your support in providing the funding that we need to continue the Teal support program. Minister, you've been a great supporter of ovarian cancer. You've listened to the needs of women, and the funding for research and treatment has significantly increased under your watch. We are forever grateful for that, and we look forward to working with you right up to the day until your upcoming retirement. And to all of our speakers today, thank you for expressing your commitment. We look forward to holding further discussions with all sides of politics regarding the importance of an investment in precision medicine for ovarian cancer. Regardless of politics, women with ovarian cancer and the Teal support program have been the winners today. And it's not often we can say that. We gather annually in Parliament House, virtually or in real life, to seek support from all of you to improve the lives of women living with ovarian cancer now and those who come next. Your support in joining us and making these funding commitments and pledges are crucial. So we are very grateful for it. We encourage everyone here today to translate this support into action. We rely on you to increase the funding so that we can continue to provide support for women living with ovarian cancer, regardless of where they live, and sufficient research funding so we can change the narrative for ovarian cancer. A special thank you to Amy for your courage in sharing your personal experience of living with the disease. We believe that the courage you demonstrate makes people stop and take notice. Amy, I heard your passionate words, and I too look forward to meeting you at Parliament House at this breakfast in 5 years' time, when we can celebrate your latest scan results showing that you are cancer-free. Finally, we thank all of our guests for your support for Ovarian Cancer Australia and the many women living with the disease. Should any of what you've heard today cause you concern, if you've got questions, please feel free to call our 1300 helpline number, which is available on our website, and you can speak to one of our wonderful team of specialist nurses. That concludes our breakfast today. Thank you all for attending, and good morning.